The red warning lights flashed across the command center as Commander Juan stared at the holographic display before him. The numbers made no sense. His hands gripped the edge of the metal table until his knuckles turned white. "Run the scan again," he ordered, his voice steady despite the cold fear creeping up his spine. Lieutenant Murray worked quickly at her station, her fingers dancing across the control panel. She had been monitoring deep space signals for 3 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. The scanner beeped softly as it completed another sweep of the outer solar system. "Sir, the readings are the same," she reported, turning to face him. "We have confirmed contacts moving toward our system. The computer estimates their numbers at over 2 million vessels." Juan closed his eyes for a moment. 2 million. The entire human fleet numbered barely 50,000 ships, and most of those were cargo vessels or mining craft hastily converted for military use. He opened his eyes and looked around the command center. Every person there was waiting for his response. "Alert Admiral Do-hyun immediately," he said. "Code Black Protocol. This is not a drill." Within minutes, Admiral Do-hyun arrived in the command center. His weathered face showed the strain of 40 years in military service. He had fought in the border wars against the pirates, led missions to establish colonies on distant worlds, but he had never seen anything like the data streaming across the screens. "How long do we have?" Do-hyun asked, studying the tactical display. Mirai calculated quickly. At their current speed, approximately 6 weeks until they reach the outer planets. Maybe 8 weeks until they arrive at Earth. The Admiral nodded grimly. 8 weeks to prepare for the largest military force in recorded galactic history. He turned to his communications officer. "Send word to every human colony, every mining station, every ship in deep space. Emergency recall. Everyone comes home now." Across the solar system, the message went out. On the mining colonies near Jupiter, workers dropped their tools and ran to evacuation ships. Research stations studying distant asteroids powered down their equipment and prepared for the journey back to Earth. Military vessels patrolling the outer regions changed course immediately, racing home with maximum engine power. Dr. Yunji received the alert while working in her laboratory beneath the Swiss mountains. She was humanity's leading expert on alien technology, having studied the few artifacts recovered from crashed ships over the decades. Her current project involved reverse engineering an alien power source that had been found on Europa 5 years earlier. 2 million ships, she whispered to herself, reading the classified briefing on her secure terminal. What could they possibly want with us? She had studied 12 different alien species through their technology and communications. Most showed little interest in humanity beyond basic trade relationships. Some seemed to view humans as primitive but harmless. None had ever shown hostile intentions on such a massive scale. The answer came 3 days later. Captain Seokjin was leading a reconnaissance patrol near the edge of the solar system when his sensors detected the first alien scout ships. 5 sleek vessels, each twice the size of his destroyer, moved with perfect formation toward the inner planets. "This is Captain Seokjin of the Terran vessel Defiant," he broadcast on standard diplomatic frequencies. "You are entering human territorial space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came not in words but in weapons fire. Brilliant energy beams lanced out from the alien ships, striking his vessel with devastating force. Emergency alarms screamed as his ship shook under the assault. "All hands battle stations," Seokjin shouted over the noise. "Return fire. Send emergency transmission to Earth Command." The battle was brief and brutal. Seokjin's ship managed to destroy 1 alien vessel before the others overwhelmed his defenses. As his ship died around him, he transmitted his final message. "Earth Command, this is Seokjin. Enemy contact confirmed. They opened fire without warning. No communication attempted. Repeat, they are hostile. Tell my family I—" The transmission cut to static. Back on Earth, Admiral Do-hyun stared at the playback of Seokjin's final message. The bridge crew stood in stunned silence. After decades of peaceful contact with various alien species, this sudden aggression made no sense. "Sir," Mirai said quietly, "we're receiving a general broadcast from the approaching fleet. Put it on main display." The screen flickered, then showed a tall, gray-skinned alien wearing elaborate ceremonial armor. When it spoke, the universal translator converted its words into clear human language. "People of Earth," the alien began, "I am High Commander Vex of the Vorthak Consortium. Our alliance represents 12 species and 17 star systems. We have observed your rapid expansion across this galaxy with growing concern. Do-hyun felt his stomach drop. This was not a misunderstanding or a territorial dispute. Your species displays dangerous levels of aggression and unpredictability, Vex continued. Your wars, your violence, your chaotic nature threatens the peace we have maintained for thousands of years. We cannot allow such a species to continue spreading among the stars. The alien's next word sent chills through everyone in the command center. Therefore, the consortium has voted unanimously for your extinction. We do not do this out of hatred but out of necessity. Your species must be eliminated before you become a threat to galactic stability. You have 8 weeks to prepare yourselves. We offer no terms, no negotiation, no possibility of surrender. This decision is final. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in dead silence. Dr. Yoonji stared at her computer screen in disbelief. She had intercepted the same broadcast in her laboratory. Extinct. They wanted to make humanity extinct. Not conquered, not enslaved, but completely wiped out. She thought about her daughter Ji-won, who was studying quantum physics at the university in Seoul. She thought about her elderly parents living quietly in their small village. She thought about the 8 billion people on Earth who had no idea that their entire species had just been sentenced to death. But instead of despair, Yoonji felt something else rising in her chest. Anger. These aliens thought they could simply decide humanity's fate based on their observations and fears. They thought humans were too chaotic, too unpredictable, too dangerous. Maybe they were right about that last part. Yoonji began working faster than she ever had before. If these aliens wanted to see dangerous, she would show them exactly how dangerous humans could be when fighting for their survival. The alien power source on her laboratory table suddenly seemed much more interesting. 8 weeks. Humanity had 8 weeks to prove they deserved to exist. The gathering storm was about to break. Ambassador Ji-young adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform one final time as her ship approached the alien fleet. The sleek diplomatic vessel Harmony carried no weapons, only communication equipment and the hope that 12 alien species might listen to reason. Ambassador, we're receiving multiple target locks from the alien formation, reported her pilot, Commander Kyung. They have enough firepower aimed at us to vaporize a small moon. Ji-young nodded calmly. She had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. Someone had to try diplomacy before the shooting started in earnest. Behind her, the entire human fleet was preparing for war, but maybe, just maybe, words could prevent the slaughter of billions. Open all communication channels, she ordered. Full spectrum broadcast. The communication array hummed to life, sending her message across every frequency the aliens might monitor. Ji-young took a deep breath and began to speak. This is Ambassador Ji-young of the United Earth Government, aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony. I come in peace without weapons, seeking dialogue between our species. We have received your ultimatum, but surely there must be a way to resolve this conflict without violence. She paused, waiting for a response. The bridge crew watched their sensors nervously as alien ships adjusted their positions around them. We are not the monsters you believe us to be, Ji-young continued. Yes, humans have fought wars, but we have also created art, music, literature. We have loved, we have sacrificed for each other. We have reached for the stars not to conquer but to explore. Please give us a chance to prove that coexistence is possible. For 30 seconds there was only silence. Then the alien response came in the form of brilliant energy beams that tore through the Harmony's hull like paper. The small diplomatic ship exploded in a ball of superheated gas, taking Ambassador Ji-young and her entire crew with it. On Earth, Admiral Do-hyun watched the destruction of the Harmony with a heavy heart. The woman had been his friend for 20 years, a skilled negotiator who had prevented 3 colonial wars through careful diplomacy. Now she was gone, and her death delivered a clear message. The aliens wanted no discussion, no compromise, no mercy. Signal all fleet commanders, Do-hyun ordered. Diplomacy is over. We fight. Captain Seokjin's younger brother, Commander Jin-woo, received the order while patrolling near Jupiter with a small squadron of fighters. Unlike the diplomatic vessel, his ships were built for combat, armed with humanity's best weapons and crewed by pilots who had trained their entire lives for battle. All squadrons. This is Eagle Leader, Jin-woo transmitted to his wing. Enemy scouts approaching Jupiter orbital space. Remember your training and watch each other's backs. The alien scout formation consisted of 50 ships, each larger and more advanced than anything in the human fleet. Their hulls gleamed with exotic metals, and their weapons could punch through human armor like it was made of cardboard. Any military computer would calculate the odds of human victory as essentially zero, but military computers had never tried to predict human behavior under pressure. The aliens approached in perfect formation, their movements coordinated by sophisticated battle computers that calculated optimal firing solutions and defensive positions. They expected the human ships to either flee or form defensive lines according to standard military doctrine. Instead, Jinwu led his 12 fighters in a chaotic spiral pattern that made no tactical sense. The alien computers tried to predict where the human ships would be next, but the pilots were making decisions based on instinct, emotion, and split-second reactions rather than logical battle plans. "Break formation," Jinwu ordered. "Everyone pick your own target and go wild." What followed was unlike anything in the aliens' database of military tactics. Human fighters scattered in seemingly random directions, then converged on alien ships from impossible angles. Pilot Hyemen rolled her fighter through a series of maneuvers that should have torn her ship apart. But somehow she ended up behind an alien cruiser, pumping missiles into its engine ports. Lieutenant Sango flew his damaged fighter directly at an alien ship's bridge, ejecting at the last second and letting his unmanned craft smash into their command center. The move was tactically insane, sacrificing a valuable ship for minimal damage. But the psychological impact on the aliens was devastating. For the first time in their military history, the Vorthak forces encountered an enemy that refused to follow logical patterns. Their battle computers generated error messages as human pilots performed maneuvers that violated basic physics and military sense. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, 42 alien ships had been destroyed or disabled, while the humans had lost only 7 fighters. The remaining alien scouts retreated in confusion, their perfect formation broken and their confidence shaken. On Earth, Colonel Yeona was coordinating planetary defense systems when the reports from Jupiter arrived. She read the battle statistics 3 times before believing them. 12 human fighters had defeated 50 alien ships through tactics that made no sense on paper but had somehow worked perfectly in practice. "Get me Dr. Yunji on secure communication," she ordered her aide. Within minutes, Dr. Yunji's face appeared on the secure screen from her laboratory. The scientist looked exhausted but excited, her eyes bright with discovery. "Colonel, I've been analyzing the alien technology we recovered from the battle," Yunji said without preamble. "Their ships are controlled by incredibly sophisticated computers, but they have a weakness. They're designed to fight against predictable opponents." "Meaning what exactly?" Yona asked. "Meaning their systems are optimized to counter logical, efficient military tactics," Yunji explained. "But humans don't always fight logically. We make emotional decisions, we take crazy risks, we improvise solutions that don't exist in any tactical manual. Their computers literally cannot predict what we'll do next." Yona felt a spark of hope for the first time since the crisis began. "Are you saying our chaos is actually an advantage?" "I'm saying that what they see as our greatest weakness might actually be our greatest strength," Yunji replied. "These aliens have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They've never encountered an enemy that fights with heart instead of just head." General Taehyun joined the conversation from military headquarters in Seoul. His weathered face showed the strain of coordinating Earth's defenses, but there was determination in his eyes. "If unpredictability is our advantage, then we need to be more unpredictable than ever," he said. "No standard formations, no textbook strategies. Every engagement needs to be unique." As reports continued arriving from the Jupiter battle, a new understanding began to emerge among Earth's military leadership. The aliens were technologically superior, numerically overwhelming, and strategically brilliant. But they had one critical flaw. They assumed their enemies would behave rationally. Humanity was about to prove that assumption very, very wrong. Lieutenant Minho had never been considered a great pilot by traditional standards. His flight instructors always criticized him for being too emotional, too unpredictable, too willing to break rules. Now, 3 weeks after the first alien contact, those same traits had made him one of humanity's most effective weapons. He floated in the cockpit of his fighter, watching the massive alien formation approaching Mars. 200 enemy ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, their formation so precise it looked like a computer simulation. Each ship was exactly where mathematics said it should be for maximum tactical efficiency. "Ghost Squadron, this is command," crackled the voice of Admiral Do-hyun through his helmet radio. "You are authorized to engage at your discretion. Remember, they expect us to follow the rules." "Don't give them what they expect," Minho grinned inside his helmet. "Don't follow the rules." That was something he could do very well. "Ghost Squadron, follow my lead," he transmitted to the 11 other pilots in his unit. "We're going to show these aliens how humans really fight." Instead of approaching in standard attack formation, Minho led his squadron in a lazy spiral that brought them toward the alien fleet from below. To alien sensors, it must have looked like the humans were either lost or suffering from equipment malfunctions. The aliens adjusted their formation slightly to counter what they assumed was a conventional flanking attack. Their computers calculated firing solutions based on projected human flight paths. Everything was going according to their battle algorithms. Then Minho did something that no sane military pilot would ever attempt. He shut off his engines completely and let his fighter drift on momentum alone, spinning slowly end over end like a piece of space debris. "Minho, what are you doing?" demanded Captain Jamin from Ghost 2. "Trust me," Minho replied, watching his tactical display. The alien formation was passing almost directly overhead now, their massive ships blotting out the stars. At exactly the right moment, he fired his engines at full power and accelerated directly upward into the belly of an alien cruiser. The alien ship's defensive systems had been tracking his projected path based on his previous movement. When he suddenly changed direction and speed, their weapons couldn't adjust fast enough. Minho's fighter punched through their shield generators and released a full load of missiles into their engine core. The alien cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Ghost Squadron." "You saw that," Minho announced. "Pick a target and do something stupid." What followed was 12 individual displays of tactical insanity that somehow worked perfectly. Ghost 7 flew her fighter backward while shooting forward. Ghost 9 used his ship's gravity well generator as a weapon, creating miniature black holes that tore alien hulls apart. Ghost 12 actually ejected from his fighter, let it fly on autopilot while he personally guided a missile to its target, then somehow managed to catch up and re-enter his cockpit. The alien formation began to break apart as their ships tried to counter attacks that made no logical sense. Their computers generated error messages and requested new tactical data for situations that had never existed before. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. So-young was making a discovery that would change everything. In her laboratory at Seoul National University, she had been studying brain scans of human pilots who had fought against the aliens. What she found surprised her so much that she repeated the tests 6 times before accepting the results. "This is impossible," she muttered, staring at the neural activity patterns on her screen. Human brain activity during combat showed chaos patterns that resembled quantum interference. The neural networks fired in seemingly random sequences that nevertheless produced effective decisions. It was as if human consciousness operated on principles that defied conventional logic. She compared these patterns to brain scans from other species that humanity had encountered. Every alien species showed orderly, predictable neural patterns during decision-making. Their thoughts followed clear logical progressions from problem identification to solution implementation. Human thoughts, however, jumped around like quantum particles. They made connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, arrived at conclusions through emotional intuition rather than logical analysis, and somehow produced effective results from mental processes that looked completely chaotic. "No wonder their computers can't predict us," So-young whispered. "We're not just unpredictable. We're actually operating on different principles of consciousness itself." Her discovery reached Admiral Do-hyun within hours. He immediately called a meeting of the entire military leadership to discuss the implications. "Are you telling me that human brains work differently from alien brains at the most fundamental level?" asked General Tae-hyun. Dr. So-young nodded. "Every species we've studied shows logical, sequential thought patterns. Humans show quantum chaos patterns. Our brains literally work like quantum computers, making millions of simultaneous calculations that somehow resolve into intuitive decisions." Commander Ji-hoon, fresh from a successful raid on an alien supply convoy, leaned forward in his chair. "So when I get a gut feeling about which way to dodge enemy fire, that's actually my brain doing quantum calculations." "In a sense, yes," So-young replied. Your conscious mind thinks you're making random decisions, but your quantum neural network is processing variables that linear logic can't handle. This revelation changed human military strategy completely. Instead of trying to become more logical and predictable, human commanders began encouraging even more chaos and intuition. The results were spectacular. Commander Jihoon's next mission involved capturing an alien command ship that was coordinating attacks on human colonies. According to every military manual ever written, the approach should involve careful reconnaissance, detailed planning, and coordinated assault by multiple ships. Instead, Jihoon loaded a single transport vessel with mining equipment and approached the alien ship, pretending to be a damaged freighter requesting assistance. The aliens, following standard procedure, brought the human ship into their docking bay to provide aid. What they got instead was Jihoon and 30 human marines armed with plasma cutters, magnetic charges, and absolutely no respect for conventional boarding tactics. The humans didn't try to capture the bridge or disable the engines like proper military doctrine demanded. Instead, they scattered throughout the ship in small groups, causing as much chaos as possible. Some planted explosives in random locations, others started fights with alien crew members in the hallways. A few even began playing loud human music over the ship's communication system. The alien crew, trained for orderly military operations, couldn't cope with the complete breakdown of structure and logic. Their command hierarchy collapsed as reports flooded in about humans doing impossible, illogical things throughout their ship. Within 2 hours, the alien crew surrendered rather than deal with any more human chaos. "This is insane," reported the alien captain to his superiors. "These humans fight without any logical pattern. They seem to enjoy creating disorder for its own sake. Our troops cannot maintain discipline when facing such irrational opponents." Similar reports began flooding back to the Vorthak Consortium from all across the solar system. Human forces were winning battles they should mathematically lose, using tactics that made no sense, displaying behavior that defied every known principle of military strategy. The aliens had expected to face a primitive but numerous enemy. Instead, they found themselves fighting an opponent whose very consciousness operated on principles that their computers could not calculate or predict. For the first time in their history, the Vorthak Consortium began to doubt their inevitable victory. On Earth, Dr. Yunji worked frantically to weaponize humanity's quantum consciousness advantage. If human brains worked like quantum computers, then maybe human-designed technology could too. The war was far from over. But humanity had discovered something the aliens never expected. Their greatest weakness was also their greatest strength. The alien fleet reached Earth's moon exactly 6 weeks after their first ultimatum. High Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying tactical displays that showed the lunar surface dotted with human defensive installations. Intelligence reports indicated that approximately 50,000 human military personnel had fortified themselves in the moon's underground bases. "Begin orbital bombardment," Vex ordered his weapons officer. "Standard planetary assault protocol. Eliminate all defensive positions." What followed was a display of firepower that should have reduced the lunar surface to molten glass. Vorthak energy weapons designed to crack the crusts of planets poured down onto human positions for 3 straight hours. When the bombardment finally stopped, the moon's surface was scarred with craters deep enough to hold entire cities. "Sir," reported the scanning officer, "we're still detecting human life signs in the underground facilities." "Recommend secondary bombardment," Vex frowned. The weapons they had just used could sterilize continents. How were the humans still alive? His question was answered when the lunar surface suddenly erupted with defensive fire. Missile batteries that should have been vaporized sent projectiles screaming toward the alien fleet. Energy weapons that should have been molten slag lit up the darkness with deadly precision. "Impossible," Vex muttered. "Nothing should have survived that bombardment." On the lunar surface, Major Hyejin crouched in the command bunker 3 kilometers beneath the moon's crust. The facility had been shaking for hours as alien weapons pounded the surface above, but the humans had learned something important about their enemy. The aliens always used exactly the amount of force their computers calculated was necessary, never more. So the humans had built their defenses to withstand exactly that amount of force, plus 50% extra, all batteries. "Maintain fire," Hyejin ordered into her communication device. "Make them pay for every meter." The battle for the moon became a grinding nightmare that neither side had expected. The aliens, used to quick victories against logical opponents, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Captain Wusung commanded one of the forward observation posts, a tiny facility built into a crater wall that should have been overrun in the first wave of alien ground troops. Instead, his 12-person team had been holding their position for 6 days, inflicting casualties on alien forces that outnumbered them 100 to 1. "Sir, we've lost contact with command," reported Sergeant Yuna, blood streaming from a cut on her forehead. "Enemy jamming has cut all communications." Wusung nodded, checking his ammunition count. They had maybe an hour's worth of fighting left before they ran out of supplies. By all military logic, they should retreat or surrender. Instead, he loaded a fresh power pack into his rifle. "Then we keep fighting until someone tells us to stop," he said simply. This attitude was repeated across the entire lunar battlefield. Human soldiers continued fighting even when cut off from command, even when surrounded, even when their weapons were running low on ammunition. They improvised explosives from mining equipment, used maintenance tools as weapons, and fought with a determination that the aliens had never encountered before. The psychological impact on alien forces was devastating. The Vorthak military had conquered 17 star systems using overwhelming force and logical strategy. Their enemies always surrendered when defeat became mathematically certain. But humans seemed to become more dangerous as their situation became more hopeless. "Status report," demanded High Commander Vex after the 3rd day of lunar combat. His ground commander's face appeared on the communication screen, and Vex was shocked by what he saw. The alien officer's uniform was torn. His expression showed something that Vex had never seen in a Vorthak warrior: fear. "Sir, we control 60% of the lunar surface, but human resistance has not decreased. If anything, they're fighting harder now than they were at the beginning." "Explain," Vex ordered. "Their soldiers don't behave according to any military doctrine we understand," the ground commander replied. "When surrounded, they don't surrender. When outnumbered, they don't retreat. When their officers are killed, they don't lose coordination. They just keep fighting." Vex studied the tactical displays showing the lunar battlefield. Red markers indicated confirmed human casualties, but somehow the intensity of human resistance had actually increased as their numbers decreased. "Perhaps they don't understand that they've lost," suggested his tactical advisor, but Vex was beginning to suspect something more disturbing. Maybe the humans did understand they were losing. Maybe they just didn't care. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Do-Yun was watching the lunar battle with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. Every human casualty report felt like a knife in his chest, but the tactical implications were becoming clear. The aliens were suffering losses they never expected, and more importantly, they were becoming demoralized. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we're intercepting alien communications. Their casualty rates are triple what their computers predicted for lunar operations." Admiral Neon, recently promoted to handle fleet coordination, studied the intercepts carefully. They're starting to question their own tactical doctrine. "Look at this report from their ground commander. Human behavior patterns do not match any known military psychology profiles." Do-Hyun smiled grimly. "They expected us to be rational. They expected us to accept defeat when the numbers said we should lose. What they didn't expect," added General Tae-hyun from his position at the Strategic Command Center, "is that humans don't fight just with weapons and tactics. We fight with something they don't have." "Which is what?" asked Neon. "Stubbornness," Tae-hyun replied. "Pure, irrational human stubbornness." The truth of his words was being demonstrated across the lunar battlefield. In Crater Base 7, Corporal Dong-Yun held his position alone for 18 hours after the rest of his unit was killed, using nothing but a damaged rifle and his own determination. When alien forces finally overran his position, they found him still fighting with a broken piece of metal. At Mining Station 4, Lieutenant Sunmi rigged the entire facility to explode rather than let it fall into alien hands. When the aliens breached the final door, they found a message written on the wall: "Humans were here. Humans will be back." In the deepest bunkers where human civilians had taken shelter, children drew pictures of Earth and talked about what they would do when the aliens were gone. Not if they were gone, but when. The adults around them might understand the mathematical reality of their situation. But the children simply refused to accept that their world could end. This unshakable confidence in eventual victory began to spread through the human forces like a virus. Soldiers who should have been demoralized by constant defeats instead began joking about what they would do to celebrate when the aliens finally gave up and went home. The psychological warfare worked both ways. Alien soldiers, used to facing opponents who became less effective as they took casualties, found themselves fighting humans who seemed to get more determined with every loss they suffered. After 2 weeks of lunar combat, something unprecedented happened in Vorthak military history. An entire alien battalion requested transfer away from combat duties, claiming they were no longer psychologically capable of fighting human forces. High Commander Vex stared at the transfer request in disbelief. His soldiers were suffering from what human psychologists would recognize as trauma, but the Vorthak had no word for such a condition. Their warriors had always been cold, logical, efficient killers who completed their missions regardless of emotional considerations. Now his most experienced troops were reporting nightmares about humans who kept fighting even after they should have been dead, about human voices laughing in the darkness of destroyed bunkers, about human soldiers who seemed to welcome death as long as they could take aliens with them. For the first time since the war began, Vex wondered if the consortium had made a mistake. They had expected to eliminate a primitive species through superior firepower and tactics. Instead, they had awakened something that refused to die. On the lunar surface, Major Hyejin received word that reinforcements from Earth were preparing to launch. She smiled as she passed the message to her remaining troops. They had held the line long enough. The aliens might have superior technology in numbers, but they had underestimated the most important weapon in the human arsenal, the absolute refusal to give up. General Kyungmin stood before the holographic display, showing the alien fleet positioned between Earth and the Moon. 200,000 enemy vessels formed a perfect sphere around the human homeworld, their formation so mathematically precise it looked like a geometric puzzle. Every alien ship was exactly where computer calculations said it should be for maximum tactical efficiency. Operation Wildfire is authorized, came the voice of Admiral Do-hyun through the secure communication channel. All fleet commanders begin immediate deployment. What happened next would have been classified as mass suicide by any rational military analysis. Instead of forming defensive positions or attempting strategic retreats, every available human ship launched directly toward the center of the alien formation. Fighters, cruisers, converted cargo vessels, even civilian craft armed with improvised weapons, all of them accelerating straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. The aliens watched this approach with their usual logical analysis. Their computers calculated that the humans were attempting a desperate final assault, probably hoping to inflict maximum casualties before inevitable defeat. Standard counter-tactics were implemented. Defensive formations tightened. Weapon systems charged to full power, but the humans weren't following standard assault patterns. Pilot Seung-woo led the first wave of fighters in an approach that made absolutely no tactical sense. Instead of coordinating their attack vectors, each human pilot chose a completely different route into the alien formation. Some spiraled in complex patterns. Others flew in straight lines. A few actually flew backward while shooting forward. All pilots, remember your training, Seung-woo announced over the communication channel. Don't think. Just feel. The words would have been meaningless to alien commanders, but human pilots understood perfectly. They had trained for months to trust their instincts over their instruments, to make decisions based on intuition rather than tactical computers. The result was absolute chaos from the alien perspective. Their defensive computers tried to calculate optimal responses to the human attack, but every time they predicted where a human ship would be next, the pilot would do something completely different. Fighter pilot Chae-young found herself surrounded by 6 alien interceptors, all targeting her ship with deadly precision. Instead of following standard evasive maneuvers, she suddenly shut off all her engines and let her ship drift while playing dead. The alien targeting systems lost their lock, assuming her ship had been destroyed. When they moved on to other targets, she restarted her engines and attacked them from behind. Captain Hyunwoo commanded a heavy cruiser that should have been destroyed in the first minute of combat. His ship was outnumbered 50-1, facing alien vessels with superior weapons and shields. Instead of trying to fight conventionally, he began using his ship like a battering ram, crashing directly into alien formations and using his vessel's mass as a weapon. The psychological impact on alien forces was immediate and devastating. Their precise battle formations began to break apart as individual ships tried to counter human tactics that defied all military logic. Alien commanders found themselves issuing contradictory orders as they struggled to respond to attacks that made no mathematical sense. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Jiwon was putting the finishing touches on humanity's ultimate weapon. Building on her mother Dr. Yoonji's research into alien technology and Dr. So-young's discoveries about human consciousness, she had created something that had never existed before: quantum resonance weapons that became more powerful. The more chaotic the operator's thought patterns, the principle is simple, she explained to the military technicians preparing to install the new weapons. Normal weapons require steady, precise control. These weapons require exactly the opposite. The more random and unpredictable the operator's neural patterns, the more damage they inflict. The technicians looked confused. They had spent their careers learning to be precise and controlled in combat situations. Think of it like this, Jiwon continued. You know how humans perform better in combat when they stop overthinking and trust their instincts? These weapons only work when operated by someone in that mental state. They literally feed on human intuition and chaos. Within hours, the new weapons were being distributed to human forces throughout the solar system. The results exceeded all expectations. Lieutenant Junho received one of the first quantum resonance rifles while defending a space station near Jupiter. The weapon looked like standard military hardware, but when he fired it, something extraordinary happened. The energy beam didn't travel in a straight line like normal weapons. Instead, it curved and twisted through space, following a path that seemed to anticipate where his target would be, rather than where it currently was. This thing is reading my mind, he reported to his commander. I think about hitting something and the weapon figures out how to do it. Similar reports came in from across the combat zone. Human soldiers found that the new weapons worked best when they stopped trying to aim carefully and simply trusted their instincts. The more they relaxed conscious control, the more effective the weapons became. The aliens had no defense against this new technology because it operated on principles they couldn't understand. Their computers could calculate the trajectory of normal projectiles, but quantum resonance weapons fired energy that followed intuitive rather than mathematical paths. Pilot Yujin used a quantum resonance cannon to destroy 3 alien cruisers with a single shot. The energy beam somehow curved around asteroids, bounced off electromagnetic fields, and split into multiple streams that hit all 3 targets simultaneously. When alien technicians analyzed the wreckage, they couldn't determine how such a thing was physically possible. But the most devastating impact of the human assault was psychological rather than tactical. The Vorthak Consortium had built their entire military doctrine on the principle that warfare was a mathematical problem with logical solutions. Superior numbers plus better technology should equal inevitable victory. Humanity was proving that equation wrong. High Commander. Vex watched his perfect battle formation dissolve into chaos as human forces continued their seemingly suicidal attack. His tactical computers generated thousands of error messages as they tried to counter human behavior that violated every known principle of military strategy. Sir, reported his communications officer, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 of our battle groups. Surrender requests? Vex couldn't believe what he was hearing. From our forces? Yes, sir. Several commanders are reporting that their crews can no longer function effectively against human tactics. They're requesting permission to withdraw from combat. For the first time in Vorthak history, their superior military forces were being defeated not by better weapons or tactics, but by an enemy that refused to behave rationally. The tide of battle had turned completely. Human forces, outnumbered 1,000 to 1, were winning through the simple expedient of being more human than any computer could predict. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Dohyun watched the tactical displays with amazement. Operation Wildfire had been designed as humanity's final desperate gamble. Instead, it was becoming the most successful military operation in human history. Sir, reported his tactical officer, alien fleet formations are collapsing across all sectors. They appear to be retreating. Dohyun smiled. The aliens had expected to face a primitive enemy that would fight according to logical military principles. Instead, they had encountered something their advanced technology couldn't handle: pure Chaotic, utterly unpredictable humanity. The final battle was about to begin, and for the first time since the war started, humanity was winning. The final battle began at dawn, Earth time. Commander Dongwu led the United Human Fleet in their last desperate push toward the alien flagship, where High Commander Vex waited with the remaining core of the Vorthak Consortium's forces. 100,000 alien ships formed a defensive sphere around their command vessel. Their formation as perfect and mathematical as ever. But perfection, the humans had learned, was a weakness. All ships. "This is Fleet Commander Dongwu," he announced over the general communication channel. "Today we end this war, not through superior firepower or better tactics, but by being exactly what we've always been, impossible to predict, impossible to break, and too stubborn to die." The human fleet's approach looked like pure chaos to alien sensors. Ships moved in seemingly random patterns, their courses shifting and changing without apparent logic. Some accelerated to maximum speed while others crawled forward slowly. A few even flew in reverse while firing forward. Admiral Do Hyun, coordinating the battle from Earth, watched the tactical display with a mixture of pride and amazement. After months of fighting, humanity had learned to weaponize their own unpredictability. Every human ship captain was making independent decisions based on instinct and intuition, creating a battle plan that existed nowhere except in the collective unconscious of the human species. The aliens tried desperately to counter this final assault. Their computers worked at maximum capacity, analyzing human movement patterns and attempting to predict what the chaotic fleet would do next. But human consciousness operated on quantum principles that no algorithm could calculate. Captain Sojin commanded the heavy cruiser Defiance, one of humanity's most powerful remaining ships. According to every tactical manual ever written, her best approach would be to target the alien flagship's weapon systems, disable their shields, then attack their engines. Instead, she did something that would have gotten her court-martialed in peacetime. She aimed her ship directly at the flagship's command bridge and accelerated to ramming speed. "Sojin, what are you doing?" demanded Admiral Naeun over the communication channel. "Something they'll never see coming," Sojin replied, her voice calm despite the insanity of her plan. The alien flagship's defensive systems calculated the trajectory of her ship and prepared countermeasures based on the assumption that she would veer away at the last moment. No sane commander would sacrifice their ship and crew in a ramming attack when other options existed. But Sojin wasn't thinking like a sane commander. She was thinking like a human. At the last possible second, she did veer away, but not in the direction the alien computers predicted. Instead of pulling up or turning left as tactical logic suggested, she rolled her ship sideways and fired every weapon she possessed directly into the flagship's hangar bay. The quantum resonance weapons, powered by her chaotic decision-making process, punched through the alien ship's shields like they were made of paper. Explosions rippled through the flagship's hull as secondary systems overloaded and critical components failed. High Commander Vex felt his ship shudder around him as human weapons tore through defenses that should have been impenetrable. For the first time in his military career, he experienced something that no Vorthak warrior was trained to handle. "Fear. Damage report," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Sir, primary shields are down. Weapons systems are operating at 30% capacity. Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 15. The reports kept coming, each one worse than the last. Around his flagship, the perfect alien formation was dissolving into chaos as human forces continued their impossible assault. Ships that should have been destroyed hours ago kept fighting with weapons that shouldn't work according to known physics. Pilots who should have been overwhelmed by superior numbers somehow kept finding ways to slip through alien defenses. Lieutenant Wujin, flying a fighter so damaged it was barely holding together, managed to single-handedly disable an entire alien battle group by using his ship's gravity generator to create artificial asteroid fields that disrupted their formation. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human forces used creativity and desperation to overcome impossible odds. Sergeant Minjae turned a damaged cargo hauler into a makeshift missile by filling it with mining explosives and steering it directly into an alien cruiser's engine core. Commander Yeji used her ship's communication array to broadcast chaotic radio signals that somehow interfered with alien computer systems. But the most decisive moment came when Dr. Jiwon, monitoring the battle from her laboratory on Earth, made a final breakthrough. studying the quantum resonance patterns generated by human consciousness during combat. She discovered something remarkable. Admiral Do-Yun, you need to see this, she called urgently over the secure channel. On her laboratory screen, she displayed the neural activity patterns of every human pilot currently in combat. The individual patterns looked chaotic, but when viewed together, they formed something beautiful and complex. A quantum interference pattern that resembled a massive neural network. The entire human fleet is functioning like a single organism, she explained breathlessly. Every pilot is making individual decisions, but somehow they're all working together on a subconscious level. It's like the entire species is thinking as one mind. Admiral Do-Hyun stared at the display in wonder. This was beyond anything they had understood about human consciousness. Faced with extinction, humanity had evolved beyond individual thinking into something approaching collective intuition. Can you enhance this effect? He asked. I can try, Ji-won replied, her fingers flying over her control panel. If I modulate the quantum resonance frequencies in all human weapons simultaneously, it might amplify the collective consciousness effect. She activated the enhancement protocol, sending new frequency patterns to every human ship in the fleet. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Suddenly, every human pilot began moving with perfect coordination, despite receiving no orders from command. Ships that had been operating independently began working together as if controlled by a single mind. Attack patterns emerged that no human commander had planned, but that somehow made perfect tactical sense. High Commander. Vex watched in horror as the chaotic human fleet transformed into something far more dangerous, organized chaos. The humans maintained their unpredictability while gaining the coordination advantages of his own forces. Sir, our battle computers cannot calculate effective counter-strategies, reported his tactical officer, panic creeping into his voice. The human fleet is operating according to principles we cannot understand or predict. Vex realized with cold certainty that the war was lost. His forces had superior technology, better weapons, and numerical advantage, but they were being defeated by an enemy that fought with quantum consciousness itself. Signal general retreat, he ordered quietly. Sir, his communications officer couldn't believe the command. You heard me. Signal all ships to withdraw. We cannot defeat an enemy that operates beyond the laws of logic and mathematics. But the humans weren't finished. As the alien fleet began its retreat, Ambassador Heejin, who had replaced the fallen Ji-young, broadcast a message across all frequencies. Her words were transmitted not just to the retreating aliens, but to every species in the galaxy that might be listening. People of the stars, she began, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's struggle and triumph. You came to our system believing you understood us. You saw our wars and called us violent. You saw our chaos and called us primitive. You saw our differences and called us dangerous. The message continued broadcasting as alien ships fled toward the edge of the solar system. But you misunderstood what you were seeing. Our wars taught us strength. Our chaos taught us creativity. Our differences taught us that many minds working together are stronger than one mind working alone. Commander Dongwu added his voice to the broadcast from his flagship's bridge. You expected humanity's end. You thought we would break under pressure, surrender when faced with overwhelming odds, accept defeat when logic said we should lose. Captain Sojin, her damaged ship still operational despite the ramming attack, joined the transmission. Instead, you discovered something about our species that we barely understood ourselves. We don't fight just with weapons and tactics. We fight with something deeper. Dr. Ji-won's voice added to the growing chorus from Earth. We fight with consciousness itself, with the quantum chaos that makes us human, with the connections between minds that allow us to think as both individuals and as a species. More voices joined the broadcast. Pilots, soldiers, civilians, scientists, all adding their words to humanity's declaration to the galaxy. We emerge unshaken, declared Admiral Do-Hyun from Earth Command, not despite our humanity, but because of it. You saw weakness where we found strength. You saw madness where we discovered method. You saw chaos where we created order. As the last alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, the message reached its conclusion with Ambassador Heejin's final words. Let this be a lesson to any species that would threaten Earth or her children. We are not the monsters you feared we might become, but neither are we the victims you expected us to be. We are human. We are chaotic, unpredictable, emotional, and absolutely impossible to defeat as long as we stand together. The transmission ended.